Hey, it's Josh here from Powder and Mohair. The topic of today's conversation is going to be transportation. To plan your trip, transportation is a key component. Today, I want to talk about kind of the main forms of transportation in Japan, which are the public transportation via the train and bus system put together by Japan Rail and its subsidiaries, as well as rental cars. Rental cars can be a real asset when you're moving from ski resort to ski resort, and maybe the key to making sure you get the best powder possible while you're in Japan. And then the final thing I want to talk about is airfare. It's a type of transportation that you have very little control over, especially when compared to Japan Rail and a rental car. However, it's the key for most of us to make our trip to Japan.
So let's start out talking about the two types of transportations that seem the most logical to use while you're in Japan. The first would be the rail system or public transportation, and that's easily accessed by Japan Rail Pass. That's a great place to look. And the second one would be getting a rental car. So we're going to go plan this trip based off the idea that we're going to go to Sapporo and ski on the northern island of Hokkaido, which is a fairly common ski destination. So let's look at some stuff really quick. The first thing I want to look at is Japan has four main islands that the rail pass serves: Kyushu, Shikoku, Honshu being the main island, it's important to know, and then, of course, Hokkaido, which is a favorite ski destination. So, Japan Rail Pass is a good deal. You get a pass, your pictures inside the pass. It's not something that I used while I was there. However, everybody else that was in my group used it, and they found it to be pretty cool for traveling around Japan. Maybe not as useful if you're sitting in one place. And when I say useful, I don't mean that it's not nice, but that having a rental car gave you some more freedom, and it was not necessarily cost effective unless you were traveling around a lot of Japan. So they give you your pass, it's got your picture inside it, it's somewhat similar in size and look to a passport. Here's some of the prices here. So you got your 7 day for 38,880 yen, 14 day for 62,950 yen, and then 21 day for 81,870 yen. And a good way to look at this is just carrying a decimal point from the end two spaces in, and that's an okay approximation of US dollars. And in fact, the exchange rate is even a little bit better than that. So if you're looking at 7 day for 38,880 yen, you're really looking at about $350. So for $350 US dollars, you can travel around Japan fairly unlimited. You make reservations for trains that you can travel on as long as there's room on the train, you can get a spot. And you can walk up to trains without a reservation. And once again, as long as there's room on the train, you can get a spot and you can ride to wherever you want as long as it's on the map shown. So this is just normal routes. You can see the high speed routes with the dark blue line, light blue line, green line. And here's a zoomed in view. So these are the bullet trains that travel around Japan, and they run with some frequency. It's pretty impressive realistically. You can get from uh, Tokyo all the way up to um, Hakodate, that's the southern city right here, probably in 6 hours on an express train. So it's no joke as far as how fast you can travel. It's a decent way to get around. The other way to get around that seems obvious would be rental car.
So rental cars are a pretty decent option. You need to get your international driving permit if you're from the United States. Other countries have different systems of working with driving internationally. So it could be that your driver's license works just fine. If you're not from the United States, I didn't research every single scenario, but there's different classes of cars you can get. The K class cars are really small and they're really cheap. So this is a K class car, the mini car right here. It is $187 for, what is that? 5 days of use. So I look at the cost per day. That's almost nothing. The fuel efficiency is pretty fantastic. You move up a class, you look at the Toyota Corolla, you're still looking at $289. Now, what I found to be really cool when I got there, and something that was concerning, was almost all the cars that you could rent had all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, and they came with snow tires. So my concern was, before I left, oh my gosh, I'm going to find this car that has all-wheel drive. Is the car going to have snow tires? I'm using it for skiing. This is going to be really awful. But most of the rental car companies in the area will put on snow tires at a certain time of year, and it comes as standard. You don't have to pay extra. You don't have to ask for it, which if there's a communication breakdown, like you speak two different languages, they speak Japanese and you speak English, it's not something you have to worry about trying to communicate. And so that was probably one of the last things I did was find a rental car, and it was probably one of the most stressful things. But as it turns out, it was a pretty easy process. I personally rented from Nippon Rental Car, and it worked out really well. I would say it's probably worth getting the insurance. I didn't have anything happen, but it was a small price to pay for the peace of mind of knowing that I wasn't going to be out a bunch of extra money that I hadn't budgeted for. So rental cars, cheap, good way to ensure that you can get from ski resort to ski resort and you are not at the mercy of public transportation. The downside, you want to get a rental car in the area that you're in. You could drive all across Japan, but there are toll roads everywhere, and the tolls are not cheap. So keep that in mind. Japan Rail might be the way to go if you're wanting to ski across Japan. And if you're looking to just ski one region, then a rental car might be the way to go. Which brings us to the idea of flying to different locations. Now, if you're going to use Japan Rail, you probably just want to fly into Tokyo and let the rail take you everywhere else. And the reason that you're going to want to fly directly into Tokyo is, let's take a look at the prices. So Denver to Sapporo, up on Hokkaido, main city up there. If you get a really cheap deal, you're going to be in the air for 33 hours. This will take you more than 2 days to get there. You do not want that. If you're going to have a reasonable flight time of 16 hours, 1 day to get there, that makes a lot of sense. You're looking at $3,000 already. And that's on multiple airlines where you're going to have to go through customs in a different country, most likely. Let's take a look. Where does this go? Denver to Tokyo direct. That's not bad, actually. It's a good deal. I would do that. But a lot of these multiple airline deals, you're going to be flying through Canada, or that's probably the only other country you'd fly through. And you might have to go through customs. You certainly, if you're flying to multiple airlines, are going to have to go out of security, get your bags, check into a different flight, go back through security, and get on your flight, which is doable, and it might be worth the money savings to you. It was not to me personally. That's a cool example of one where with direct flights, you wouldn't have to worry about it. But you're still looking at $3,000 versus Denver to Tokyo. You got a hacker fare here, $696. Now, once again, you have to dink around with the same thing. You're going to have to go out through security. But even here on ANA Airlines, you don't need to worry about that at all. You're looking at $2,380. If you're willing to be flexible, maybe you'll go to Air Canada, put in those same dates, and you're like, hey, look at this. $1,293 if you leave on the 13th and get back on the 21st. Or even crazier, $1,148 if you're leaving on the 14th and get back on the 21st. It does make sense sometimes to go ahead and go directly to the airline and take a look at the prices. I flew Air Canada, Denver to Tokyo, and I didn't have quite as good a deal as this one down here, but I was looking at this price range right here, and that is great flying one airline. I did have to go through Canada, but since I was on one airline, my bags checked through. I didn't have to go through customs in Canada. I didn't have to go through security. It was a really easy process, and instead of spending $3,000 to go directly to where it was going, I was looking a lot more like $1,282. And remember, this is Canadian dollars here. And so if we're talking US dollars, it's a little bit of a savings. It's not a lot, but a little bit of a savings. And then if you want to, you can mess around with going to look at flights from Tokyo to places like Sapporo. So here's got Tokyo Haneda Airport to the Sapporo Airport. And we're looking at 22,960 yen. So we're looking at $230, even less than $230, on top of our $1,282, and we're looking at $1,500 to get us to Sapporo, which is half as cheap as our flight directly to Sapporo. So you might keep those things in mind when you're planning your trip, because it might be cheaper to fly through Tokyo, and in fact it probably is. Now, this does raise one issue. If you're flying to Tokyo, you're going to probably land in, and I know you will if you fly Canada Air or Air Canada, you will land in Narita Airport. And if you look at this, we're leaving from Haneda Airport in Tokyo and going to Sapporo. You have to get from one airport to the other. And that brings us to something I don't have open. That's Japan Limo Bus. Great deal. Airport limousine bus. Friendly airport limousine. Look at the timetable and fare. You want to go from Narita Airport to Haneda Airport. You're going to spend 3,100 yen, $31. Easy way to get around. And you can buy a package of tickets, which is a real deal. I think that might be under hot deals. You might check that out. Could be even cheaper than that. And so for less than $62, you'll have round trip fare from one airport to the other. And if you look at the timetable, let's see if I can find that. Right here, PDF. It's not in Japanese, don't worry. I mean, the top part is, but the bottom is not. You see all the times, when they leave, where the bus is going to be at what time. And it's not perfect because traffic exists, but I didn't run into any traffic issues while I was driving around Tokyo. I am quite confident that is the reality sometimes. So give yourself an extra hour and you'll probably be good to go. It was about an hour and a half bus ride from one airport to the other, and just super easy to find in both airports. You go buy your ticket, you stand in your line outside at the bus stop, and they help you load your luggage. They put tags on your luggage and take it off at the right stop for you based on the tags. Super organized system. Most things in Japan are, and this was no exception. So my tips to you, look for flights to Tokyo, regardless of whether you're doing Japan Rail or not. And then look for a separate flight to wherever you want to go. Maybe that's Sapporo. Maybe that's Nagano. I definitely would not fly to Nagano from Tokyo, but just an example. And if you're staying in a region, rent a car. Use that to get around. It gives you some freedom. It's fun to drive somewhere new. And if you want to travel around a lot of the country, then the Japan Rail Pass is probably the way to go. Please feel free to leave any questions in the comments. I'll help any way I can. And remember to ski hard, take risks. Don't forget to subscribe.
And as always, ski hard, take risks, and don't forget to subscribe.
Hey, it's Josh here from Powder and Mohair. The topic of today's conversation is going to be transportation. So, as you plan your trip, transportation is a key component. Today, I want to talk about kind of the main forms of transportation in Japan, which are the public transportation via the train and bus system put together by Japan Rail and its subsidiaries, as well as rental cars. Rental cars can be a real asset when you're moving from ski resort to ski resort, and maybe the key to making sure you get the best powder possible while you're in Japan. And then the final thing I want to talk about is airfare. It's a type of transportation that you have very little control over, especially when compared to Japan Rail and a rental car. However, it's the key for most of us to make our trip to Japan. So stay tuned for more.